daily rider, Honda CRF 250L. Today we'll talk about a few things I like about the bike and a few things I do not like about the bike. Starting off with the list of likes, we're gonna go with ride height. For me, I stand 5'4", 5'5" on a good day. This bike is the lowest on ride height. As you can tell right there, I feel in complete control of the bike, but I'm also one single-footed, meaning while I can use 2 feet to, keep the bike upright, it's using 2 feet on my toes, the tips of my toes, and for the most part, I do not use that method for stopping, or even for emergency actions. I tend to kind of like slide a little onto one end or something if I need to. Ooh, that car, wow. Yeah, that little Volkswagen there about tagged the bigger suburban looking vehicle. I mean, it doesn't look like they're from town, so at least from our town here, so I understand. Whoa, hey, beautiful vehicle. I don't know what that was, but that was awesome looking. That being said, like I was saying, ride height. Shortest dual sport or lowest ride height in the dual sport category that I found, and its weight allows you as a short rider, or a as tall as you can be rider in my situation, the weight is manageable with one leg, so you don't have to really worry about having something real heavy, like for example a Super Sport, because I have a Super Sport and I could tell you the weight there is different, and it also requires a different mindset. You can't just go into that thinking, oh, I'm just gonna stop, because a Super Sport is a lot heavier. I have a R6, and I could tell you in the end I'm really careful with how even when I need to perform emergency actions, I tend to try to use the front brake in such a way where it stays as straight as possible, so I don't, the bike stays as straight as possible, so I don't get too much, side wobble, because I'm realistic. I know on that bike, as heavy as it is, if I got too much side wobble and it was throwing me left to right, it's something I truly feel would probably cause me to go down, because it's a heavy bike. I mean, it's just like that, right? Unlike this bike, a lot lighter, I feel I could at least bounce between that wobble and control it a lot better than the R6. Anyways, as in right here, the road is concaved or, curved on one side. I could still reach the floor without a problem, and if I bounce over to the other side, it's not an issue. The reality is, for a dual sport bike, this is an awesome ride height, especially for shorter riders. Moving on next on the list of likes, price. Coming in at about $5 grand, depending on who and where you buy it from. New, as far as being of the year. I actually got this bike a little cheaper because I got it at the beginning of 2016, right when Honda had already announced the 2016 models, but our dealer hadn't got any 2016 models, and they did have 2015s, so I got a discount on it because I didn't want to have to pay full price on a 2015 in 2016, if that makes any sense. That being said, $5,000, street legal, dual sport, in my opinion, you can't go wrong. Next on the list of likes, I'm gonna have to say gas gauge, or fuel gauge, whatever you want to call it, petro gauge. That being said, having a fuel gauge is awesome, especially if you're going to be out in the trails or even in the city. you know, depending on where you're going to be riding, knowing exactly how much fuel knowing exactly how much fuel you have is very, very much good feeling. I mean, the whole idea of a low fuel indicator light, it's like, come on, man, really? A low fuel indicator light for anything that you ride on the road, street, is something that, I don't know, I just don't find very useful. Yep, R6, I've ran out of gas on it before because of that light. But no, it's not because of the light, it was because I was dumb and I didn't put gas when the light came on, thinking I had more mileage in the tank and actually didn't. But that being said, fuel gauge, awesome. Alright, next on the list of bikes, I'm gonna add looks. This bike looks very much like its racing brother, the 250R. Unlike other manufacturers, dual sports, they don't look like the racing version. Well, to be fair, they probably shouldn't look like the racing version because, hey, someone hit the crosswalk, didn't they? Yep. Like I was saying, they probably shouldn't look like the racing version from, I guess, one perspective, because they are a dual sport. They're not necessarily a dirt bike. But when I was looking and trying to make my selection, I very much wanted something that looked like a race, or excuse me, not a race bike, a dirt bike. So when I saw this bike, it was almost a, hey, Mr. Grom, what's going on? It was almost a sure thing I was going to get it just based on looks. But of course, I did a test ride and everything and fell in love with it in the end. Anyways, next, I'm going to have to throw maintenance. That was another biggie for me, was I didn't want to have to be changing my oil every 10 hours or in any hour form. And I also didn't want to have to be running, you know, large maintenance, which I consider large maintenance things like, for example, valve checks, stuff like that, every like 5,000 miles either, or 8,000, whatever. I was hoping something on a yearly basis at the most, or at the least I should say, and you know, anything greater than that would have been great, obviously. But this bike, very good on maintenance. Pretty much like a vehicle, you have a 600 mile check, depending on who you're talking to and, you know, which dealer you go to and which internet website you read. There's a valve check at that 600 mile check, I should say, checkup or whatever you want to call it. But in my manual, it did not call for a valve check, so I didn't do the valve check. Overall, I believe it's 5,000 or 8,000 miles, somewhere in there, for the next oil change. I do my oil change every 3, just because, well, that's just something I believe in and wanted to do. But maintenance, yeah, you can't go wrong on that side, at least for this bike. Is there somebody, or are we stopping for other vehicles? Because this guy just took off. Okay, let's go. Man, that is a lot of traffic. I should have probably turned around before all this traffic, because now I'm gonna have to probably go over here, actually. Let's go over here. Try to find a way back over in the area where we were, because I'm sure this little community knows every person that rides through here, or drives through here, I should say. And yeah, because there was a lot of traffic up there that I really didn't want to deal with, at least deal with today. This is exactly the most, what should I call it, easiest intersection to navigate, but we shall deal. Hey, sorry bro. No, it's okay, go ahead. Okay, good. Somebody stopped us all. Moving on to the list of dislikes. Well, first off, for a daily rider, the seat, it's kind of hard. It's broken in somewhat in the 4,000 miles that I put on it, and it's bearable in most situations, I guess, but the reality is I'm already looking into having a custom one made for it from a friend, because I like the ride height with the current seat, so I don't want that adjusted or modified in any way. And I do believe most, or maybe at least a few aftermarket seats I looked at, suggested that the ride height may be altered, and I don't want my ride height altered in any way. So going custom is probably the right move in that sense. And the gentleman I at least have spoken to has explained that he could not only keep it the same, but make it a lot more comfortable, just with different material and foam. So we're gonna go with that. Next on the list of dislikes is the skid plate. For a bike that is at least expected to do light trail riding, that skid plate at the bottom, total plastic, total not useful in my opinion. Even, well, I guess for city riding it's not a problem if you don't get too big of a rock or something shot up under there, but for the most part it's gonna go the first time you hit anything of significance. Piece of wood, a log, a rock, yeah, I see that skid plate going. But, well, you know, you did only pay $5,000 for the bike, so can't complain that it has a cheap skid plate, I guess. But next on the list of dislikes, this is kind of one of those things that I wish would have been fixed, but it's not, and I knew it going into buying the bike, so it's not a real huge surprise. But the suspension, it's just not the best. I mean, it's kind of sloppy, it's really sloppy, not kind of. And if you look down here, as you can see, you can't adjust the front forks or the front suspension or the rear suspension. So even for a rider like myself, weighing under 200 pounds, and I'll show you here at this stoplight, when I give any kind of significant front braking, this bad boy dips good, look. Woo! And I'm not very heavy. If I was over the 200-pound mark, I could just assume this bike would dip nice. I mean, it would go a lot further than it just did on that little brake test. But I don't know. That's something I wish would have been at least, I don't know, considered to be a little more tight, when, especially if it couldn't be adjusted. I think riding on the tight side of a suspension might be a little better than so sloppy, because when you hit at speed, when you hit significant dips in the road, not only are you bouncing with the dip, but you're bouncing with the suspension too, and sometimes that carries on further than that actual dip that you hit. The R6 is a good example. When I hit a dip in the road, while it throws me up, the bike does not continue to have the bounce or the spring that the dip created. On this bike, you definitely feel a little continued action, I guess, after the initial going through that particular part of the road. So I mean, again, it was not the biggest deal, I guess, because I just kind of deal with it, but I wish it was better. Hey bro, what's going on? Now, the next item on the list of dislikes is the exhaust, which in my opinion was a safety issue. I mean, it was so quiet you could barely hear it, and the engine only being a 250cc, you could not hear that. So any vehicle on the side of you there, you could rest assured, even if you revved at them, they weren't going to hear that exhaust. So that was one of the very first things I replaced, was the exhaust with this Yoshi back here. It sounds good, as you could hear. But more importantly, somebody on the side of me, any vehicle, there's a better chance, a lot better chance with this exhaust that if you rev at them, they're going to hear you, and hopefully they won't merge into your lane, which is really why I purchased the exhaust. I didn't realize how good the bike looked afterwards. Once I put the exhaust on, I should say. But yeah, so you know, some people modify the stock exhaust and can get a good sound out of it. I just didn't want to go through all that trouble, so I just went ahead and slapped on a slip-on. I didn't do the whole front header because I believe if you do the front header, they want you to also, or it's recommended that you throw on a, I think it's called a EJK, or basically a remapping the fuel and air ratio stuff to account for all the new air you're exhaling with on that big old header. And I didn't want to deal with all that at the time. I just wanted to get something that, like I was saying, if I was on the side of a vehicle and I gave them a rev like that, there's a better chance they're going to hear me than they would have with that stock exhaust. And as much traffic as I deal with on a daily basis, yeah, that had to get fixed real quick. Alrighty, let's talk about the next thing on the dislike list, which is on the instrument panel, no RPM gauge. It's like, really? While I really do, like I was saying earlier, love revving the Yoshi, I love being able to see how far I'm going in the RPM. I mean, really? It's like the Grom, I'm pretty sure, has an RPM gauge. Come on, Honda. Oh, now also, we'll stay on the tack, or, why did I say tack again? Anyways, the instrument panel. Next on the dislike list, no current temperature reading. While there is right there a little light that would illuminate when the temperature got hot or to a warning stage or something like that, well, I got a phone call, so you guys are going to have to wait. Yeah? Hello? Yeah? Yeah? Well, no, I'm go to take what, that picture? What were you talking about? Yeah, no, I'm busy right now. Not right now. Okay. Okay, bye. I can't hang up. You call me. I'm riding. There you go. It's like I'm riding a bike, man. I can't hang up. Alrighty. Like I was saying a few minutes ago, before I got that phone call, the instrument panel has no RPM gauge, no freaking current temperature. It's like, really? Two things I believe are very important when you're riding around on a motorcycle. You'd want to know the RPMs, and you also want to know the temperature. That's just me, I guess. This bike at some RPM, and I've read it's like 10K or maybe a little bit more than that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is this bike supposedly also, well, not supposedly because I've actually hit it, has a rev limiter. So again, another reason to have a RPM reading on the instrument panel. if you're gonna have a rev limiter, then, well, maybe I guess that's why they put the rev limiter. Since you don't have an RPM gauge, they don't want you to over rev it, so you have a rev limiter. Well, that probably makes more sense now that I kind of talked that through a little with you guys. But anyways, again, things that could be fixed, aftermarket parts, stuff like that. As I think I read about little some kind of computer that you would throw some sensors, as you can imagine, into the coolant system. You would, you know, kind of patch into that and patch into, you know, the ignition some way, and through the computer, I think, and you would be able to then have a external little computer that would have the RPMs and temperature. But that just seems like a lot of work, and not, maybe I'm just lazy, I guess, probably. Well, you know, that's just how it rolls. What up, dude? We're just riding around, trying to make a vlog. Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next item on the dislike list, which is at high speed. This bike has a semi-moderately bad wobble. As I understand, it's due to a lot of factors. Wind, I guess mostly the weight of the bike has a lot to do with the fact that it does have a wobble, like a front end wobble at really high speed. And I guess also another problem is probably the fact that I don't exactly weigh enough for the bike. I mean, I'm under the 200-pound mark, and I'm just thinking that does contribute to the fact that at high speeds, ouch, anyways, at high speeds with the right wind, I do get some wobble, and it's something that you have to take into consideration when you're trying to maneuver through traffic or even on a turn, because if that wobble hits you on the turn and you're not expecting it, you know, you could definitely lose the bike. And I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you, because it's pretty bad if the wind is coming at you crosswind. The wobble can get kind of squirrely. There's been a few situations where I was on the highway and there were parts of the highway that were blocking the wind, you know, like I was just in a situation where the barriers of the actual highway were what were doing most of the wind blocking for me. And then when I got out of that barrier, the crosswind hit me, and boom, there you go. You could just feel it just like that. As soon as that crosswind, and you do have to account for it. So it's something that I guess it shouldn't necessarily be a dislike, more as a you should know how to ride a light bike problem, I guess, maybe? I don't know. Anyways. Well, now that I just did that little pool there around that bus, I should add another item to the like list, which is the power. This bike, for my weight, it's powerful. First, second, third, and a little part of fourth, yeah, it could pull, and it could pull me. Again, I weigh under 200 pounds. Let's just keep it at that, I guess. Anyways, I weigh under 200, and it's pretty nice on the lower RPMs. At high speed, I do have to watch it a little as far as where to reserve my power, because around 65, 70, that's where I like to keep it. 75 max. Whoa, yo, glad they saw me. But that being said, 75 max, because if there's a vehicle on the side of me like there is right now, and we were on the highway, at 75 I would have a little, and I tell you this when I say a little bit of pull that I could get around if they started to merge into my lane while I was honking and yelling and screaming probably at them. But again, the power at the lower speeds, it's awesome. I mean, you could feel it nice and torquey as far as torquey is to me. Hey, don't think that bus ran the red light. You see the little white light up there that's on the way right? That's their light. So I once had a bus driver tell me that, just because he didn't want me to take that exact light actually when he left. He was like, hey man, just to let you know, don't leave with me on the red, because I actually have that little white light up on the way right to let me go. I was like, wow, glad for letting me know, but even if, well, maybe he was just being considerate. Actually, I'm sure that was the case, but nonetheless, I would have probably not left on that, just because I was pretty focused that night, just because it was pretty late and I was downtown, and you don't always want to be downtown when it's too late. Where are we going? I don't know. Okay, we gotta figure this out. Nope, we're not gonna go there. Definitely. Here's where we're gonna go. No, you can't turn there. Okay, how are we gonna do this? I know what we're gonna do. We're just gonna get right over here and throw a Yui, which another item on the like list. Like right here, nimble. I could just throw this bike around. Even though I can't flat foot it with both feet, doesn't matter. One foot is all you need to control this bike with the weight. Sorry for adding a couple of likes in there while we were talking about dislikes. I just kind of ADD today like that. Sorry about that, people. All the people. Let me take off some sweat here. Take off some sweat here. Actually, I'm just gonna kind of chill here for a second. Hey. Okay. Well, funny enough, even though I don't put this kind of gas, it does remind me of something I need to add to the dislike list, which is small gas tank. 2.5, 3 gallons, maybe it's less than that. It's actually quite small. Sorry, I had to get a little AC from that stop. Anyways, speaking of the gas tank, extremely small. For a daily rider, I put gas basically every day. If I'm lucky, I'll put gas every other day. Never really go more than 2 days, not unless I'm really not riding the bike. So there are aftermarket tanks. I chose to put gas every day. I kind of like the look of the stock tank, if I'm being honest. Moving on to the next thing on the dislike list, and this is just kind of a functional thing that I think they should have made with the bike. The trunk is on the left-hand side over here, and it's upright, you know, so it's on the side of the bike and it stands tall. Cool, whatever. Now, the problem I have with it is, instead of being one big open area, maybe a little deeper into the bike, some way, somehow, whatever, that trunk is shelved. And you would not believe how limited it makes the capacity of things you can carry. Since it's shelved, you have two little spaces, two thin little spaces that you can use, as opposed to one larger space that maybe was a little deep, and if anything was shelved singly at the top a little higher, so 90% of the usage was for capacity, I should say usage, whatever, capacity, like I said. So 90% of the entire area would be useful for putting something in there. I don't know. But right now, this trunk carries the stock tools and my insurance card. That's all I could pretty much put in that trunk. I've once put the GoPro Hero Session in there, but it was like bowing the shelving a little because it basically didn't fit. That's how thin the shelving is. You can't put a GoPro Hero Session into it without kind of bowing the top shelving. I didn't try the bottom shelving, I should say that right off the bat, but the tools are in by default in the bottom. That's pretty much all I have for now, I should say. For my likes and dislikes on the Honda CRF 250. I mean, overall, this is an awesome bike. I would recommend it to anybody that really... Hey, bro, go ahead. You gonna come in? Go ahead. You gonna come? Like I was trying to say, I would definitely recommend it to anybody on a budget looking for a decent dual sport that can be upgraded later if you want, and won't really not only break the bank, but you know, it'll also serve its purpose as far as if you plan for daily riding or even mild riding. I mean, this bike it's pretty much going to fit the bill, in my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed my likes and dislikes and fumbles and everything else we had in this video. If you did, hit the like button. If you know somebody that would find this information useful, how about hitting that share button? If you want to hear more from me, you know you'll have to hit that subscribe